Hi, everybody. Lovely to have you with us again. And lovely to see so many of you choosing the Customer Success Network in our webcast. Pleasure to be with you, as usual. Today's guest is Christophe Labreure, a Customer Success and Professional Services leader with over 25 years of experience in local and in global markets. During his time in 6 global businesses, including Adobe and Oracle, Christophe occupied various positions, including pre-sales, sales, channels, consulting, education, and always in international environments and in managerial positions. Today, as the VP of Customer Success at Nexthink, Christophe leads the global CS and professional services teams, and as you're about to find out, he's involved in a lot more than just customer success. At the Customer Success Network, we have heard from many of you that companies and CS organizations are going through a change of strategy and restructure recently, perhaps due to the COVID situation or perhaps because of other changes in business and market environments. We hear more and more that the focus of every SaaS business is now customer retention and satisfaction. And it sounds like the usual everyone is in sales has now become everyone is in CS. But do we stop and think about what it really means to make such a big transition? Is it that easy to refocus the whole company onto the customer and ask them to show behaviors that put customers first? Christophe recently led such a change at Nexthink, and I look forward to hearing a lot about it from him. This webcast, as usual, hosted by the Customer Success Network. My name is Morika Georgieva. I'm your host today, a member of the Customer Success Network and the Customer Success team at Primitive. Questions, please post them in the chat box or in the Q&A. Christophe's going to do a quick presentation, then we're going to go into a quick interview, and then we're going to be addressing your questions. As usual, we'll answer them all. We're live streaming in our workplace community. You'll be able to see the webcast there in the future. If you want to access previous webcasts and this one in a couple of weeks, you can also take a look at our YouTube channel, the Customer Success Network. But anyway, the topic today is super exciting, so I'm not wasting any more time. Christophe, I'm handing over to you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Morika, for that introduction. So hello, everybody. I hope you are going well despite the current situation. Today, I want to share with you my experience. So I'm not saying that this experience is valid for all of us and for all the companies. So it's just an example of what we are doing at Nexthink. I don't want to introduce Nexthink. If you are interested, don't hesitate to visit our website. We are a software vendor created 12 years ago, a little bit more in Switzerland, in Lausanne. And we are very international. So I'm sure that you can recognize some patterns in your own model, in your own company. But once again, it's just an example I would like to share today with you. So, regarding the agenda, I hope, seems that, okay, fine. So the agenda, first I would like to explain you what was the situation before. So what was the situation in 2019 and why we thought it was important to change in 2020. What was the reason behind? So we will review that, and probably we will share some existing or some reason which resonates for you. I will explain what is the new CSM positioning from now, and what was the journey to move from the past situation to the new norm, to the new situation in 2020. So this is mainly the 4 parts of my presentation today. So very quickly and very briefly, the situation in 2019. At that time, we had a team of approximately 20 CSM located in all the countries, so US, UK, Germany, Switzerland, France, Australia, Middle East. So I need to remove the, and we had a segmentation of our customers. So those 20 customers were covering approximately half of our install base. We have more than 1,000 customers right now, fully B2B. And it was those 50 customers was representing approximately 80% of our total ARR. At this stage, our CSM were commissioned and measured mainly on the renewal rate plus personal MBOs. So renewal rate was representing approximately 30%, between 20-30% of the variable of the CSM. You will see later that it's important. End of, I think it was end of 2018, December, we acquired and we deployed in March 2019 a CSM management solution, Gainsight, and we implemented two main parts, two major steps. The first one was the customer 360-degree view by integrating Salesforce data, Zendesk data to ticketing system, and some usage data of our solution. So how the customer is using our solution, how often, how many users, and so on. And we implemented our first alerts and playbooks. So for people familiar with Gainsight, we implemented our first CTAs, and related to those CTAs, call to action, we had developed some playbooks. In addition, in 2019, we started to work on a common QBR template and similar, what we call EBR, Executive Business Review. It was something we decided to implement in order to be consistent across the region. It was very important, so it's why I mentioned that, because it was a way to structure better our CSM meeting with our key customers especially. And during the last 2 quarters of 2019, the CSM were also responsible of collecting some case studies, so customer stories and successes. So we implemented a template, very simple template, in order to collect approximately 100 customer stories. So in a nutshell, it was what we had at the end of 2019.
A couple of quick questions here, just we've had. Do you mind just specifying what is meant by MBO?
Oh, yes, sorry. MBO means, it's an acronym for management by objectives. So it's personal objectives, qualitative or quantitative. Usually SMART, specific, measurable, achievable, and so on and so on.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Excellent, thank you.
Sorry for that acronym. Okay, nevertheless, during the year, we identified some weaknesses. Of course, you have no perfect model, and you have always to think about improving what is existing, your organization, your template, your processes, and so on. And you can see on that slide something which is probably common and very known for some of you, because it's usually what we are discussing between CSM from different companies. So first of all, the main problem or the main challenge we identify at the management level was, in fact, the problem of having a strong presence of the CSM was, at the end, the sales reps could be disengaged from their customers because they were relying too much on the CSM, and they were less committed in following their customers, and they were focusing too much on the newbies only, instead of covering also the renewal and the upsell. So it was the first observation. The second challenge is that organization fully managed centrally by me. Even if the CSM were located in the region, they were reporting to someone based in Central. And sometimes it was creating a perception of silo with different tools, different processes, So as usual, there is no perfect organization. So you can consider that the function is important and the region, the country could be a second priority. So, but at the end, you can create some silo with a lack of interaction between the different functions. The third challenge was about the skills. When we started to recruit our first CSM 3-4 years ago, we recruited CSM with a certain profile, with a certain mission. But everything is evolving. And in 2019, we consider that our CSM had to be much more technical, much more closer to the product, able to do some technical trainings or technical demonstration, and also to be able to have a very value-oriented discussion, to be much more prescriptive with, especially with key customers, very demanding customers. So we had a plan to train our CSM, and I will come back later, but it was definitely a need to change our levels of game, to have CSM more technical and with a different profile. And finally, maybe the most important challenge was how to grow and how to expand that model, knowing that this model could be very expensive if we want to scale and if we want to cover our full install base. Even if we have the low touch, tech touch, high touch segmentation, we know that at the end could be pretty expensive to cover all the segments. The CSM model could be a model based on tools like Gainsight, or could be a model based on human resources. In addition of those challenges, we came in 2020 in March with the COVID-19 situation. So I hope is everything clear for you about the consequences. But at Nexthink, I don't know if it's the same for you, but we realized that it could be much more difficult to acquire new logo and to engage with new customers. And at the opposite, it was a moment when we realized that it was really key to have a very strong focus on our existing customers and to protect our renewals. Because most of the customers would face some financial situation and challenges, and probably they will have to reduce their cost by removing or canceling some subscription contract. So it was very, very important to protect our renewal by focusing not only the CSM, but the account manager, the solution consultant, the consultant, everyone should focus on protecting those renewals. And by doing that, it was also an opportunity to expand our customer base by adding some upsell and cross-sell opportunities to our 1,000 customers. So the consequence of those challenges is, the conclusion was, if everyone is a salesperson, everyone should be also a CSM during that period. During that difficult period, we have really to focus even much more compared to the past on our install base and our existing customers. So we decided to operate some changes. The first one is related to people. Unfortunately, we moved from a team of 20 CSM to 10 CSM only today. So we had some internal moves. So some, the more senior and technical CSM move in a billable role, in a consulting role. And we have some external move outside the company. So it's not exactly the sentence I wanted to write. So external move is not moving into a consulting role, which is more internal. But unfortunately, for instance, we had to close our subsidiary in Australia. It doesn't mean that we are not covering Australia, but we are covering Australia thanks to an indirect model with a dedicated partner. and we have moved our main resources from Nexthink to this indirect model, indirect channel. In terms of management, it's not a big change for me, but the CSM now are reporting to the regional pre-sales manager. So they are not part of a global community or a global team, they are part of the local pre-sales team. But I continue to have a global role to coordinate the CSM, especially for sharing best practices, just to ensure that we are using Gainsight and some other tools in a very consistent and coherent way. And in my role, we added some function like the user groups and the online community. I think it was very important in order to scale and to cover more customers with less resources. So Gainsight was a way already to be much more productive, but the online community is a second way to be also more productive by touching some customer in a more effective way. In a user group are also very virtual. It's why we have some physical user group and we have some community user group, some group of discussion, virtual webinar, and so on and so on. At the end, the objective was to be perceived as more aligned with less silo around the different functions, across the different functions. The second type of changes is about processes. So the good news is we kept our CSM best practices, but we just adapted those processes and we made those processes more largely adopted. For instance, the ABR. The ABR is not something just reserved or dedicated for the CSM. It's something we can perform and execute by a solution consultant, by an account manager. I think people are now convinced about what is an EBR, how to structure an EBR. And the good thing is we started with the CSM to deliver those EBR, but it's really something we can deploy for some other functions into the company. Same for the success plan. Okay. The customer segmentation has been maintained, but we have simplified that segmentation. I think we arrived to a very complex segmentation with a lot of if. We decided to maintain that customer segmentation, but to have a very simplified model. And you will see that it's quite important to have something very simple in order to move and to be much more flexible in our changes. Remember the challenge we had about the skills. So we decided to train our CSM on some pre-sales activities, not regarding the POC, the POC, and the POV. We don't expect CSM to run a prototype, but at least they have to be able to demonstrate Nexthink to their customers, and they need to understand better our technology by adding some technical skills. And the fact that CSM are now reporting to the pre-sales team helped a lot. And the main change is, remember, the CSM were measured on renewal. In 2020, they are measured as pre-sales, as consultant on the net new ARR. So everyone is measured on that ARR, and the portion of their variable has been increased a lot to reflect the importance of that metric. So MBOs, management by objective, are still valid, but we decrease the portion and the percentage of the MBO in the variable part of the salary. So once again, the objective was to have less silo perception, more teamwork, and some different skills for our existing CSM. The last change was about the solution and tools. And this is probably the most important change. Even if we still have Gainsight, we decided to use Gainsight to reinforce the importance of having a 360-degree view of the customer. Okay, so data is really your friend. So all the data about a customer should be visible in one tool. And it's not Salesforce. We decided to put the truth into Gainsight. So we have much more data, more integration with some other system, and we are focusing on the data quality, which is really key if you want to raise the relevant alerts to create the relevant report for other people. We also created, thanks to the new data, we also created a new scorecard, a new dashboard for qualifying a customer. And we expanded the access of Gainsight to more people into the company. So to illustrate that, this is what we had in 2019, at the end of 2019. So you can see that the customer view was consisting of Salesforce data, Zendesk, homegrown application related to the usage data, plus manual entries, mainly performed by the CSM. And at the end, you have the consumer of the data, who were mainly the CSM and the management team. In 2020, the main changes is to add some data coming from our telemetry. So it's a new version of our usage data. The community, the online community, to measure the virtual or the community engagement of our contacts. The academy, which is our e-learning platform. Our PSA system, which is Kimball, so in order to manage our consulting engagement. And we reduce the part or the importance of the manual entries. We try to minimize the number of manual entries to automate everything because we have less CSM resources available. And in terms of consumer, we added many people. So we had CSM and management in 2019, it's still the case, but we added the sales and marketing mainly through either Gainsight or through the widget we can integrate directly into Salesforce with a scorecard. So this is a new way to use Gainsight. So we minimize the CTA, the playbook, and we concentrated our effort on the data, which is the foundation. And it's a way to start the alert, the management reports, and so on and so on. So I think it was really key to expand the visibility of the customer related to the community, the consulting activities, and so on and so on. In addition, you see another acronym, which is OKR. So OKR is another declination of the MBOs, but for the company. So it's key objective and results. So we have a new system allowing the management to define some very high level objective with result expected. And we can cascade those objectives to each individual. So it's very important because I took one example, which is the NPS. So the NPS was mainly related to the CSM activity in the past. Now, NPS is not limited to the CSM. It's a metric measured at the company level every quarter. So it was not really the case in the past, but now, thanks to this OKR approach, we define some very key objectives at the management level. And among those objectives, this is the NPS, and we can cascade that objective depending on your function and your day-to-day job. And we are working also on having a central repository, which is a common challenge for every company. So how to find all the documents related to a customer, how to use a common methodology, common framework to address a new customer, etc., etc. Usually we had some repository by function, by departments. It's, in fact, the objective today is really to concentrate everything around the customer, not around the departments, but around the customer. So it's why the CSM spirit or the CSM mindset has been deployed inside the company at Nexthink through the different examples I just gave. In conclusion, let's consider that we reduce the number of CSM, we change the organization, but I would consider, I'm very positive because I consider that today, in fact, the CSM could be considered as a coach in terms of mindset, in terms of skills, in terms of documents, in terms of tasks. In fact, a CSM can explain how to deliver a QBR or an EBR. It can explain how to use or how to interpret customer data, the different scorecards, and so on and so on. So for me, it's really important to work as a team and to have a CSM coaching other members of the team how to deal with the customer, knowing that a customer is really different compared to a prospect. So it could be very obvious for all of you as a CSM, but you know that on a day-to-day, it's not so obvious. So it's still relevant to make a difference between how to deal with the prospect, how to deal with the customer. And I think that what we are discussing on a daily basis on the different forum, the different CSM meetup, is very important because it's something we have to, in fact, we have to discuss not only between CSM, but we have to discuss by inviting account managers, solution consultant, pre-sales consultants, and so on. We have developed a lot of best practices in dealing with customers, and we have to share those best practices. It's why by having less CSM, we are forced to educate other functions in dealing with CSM best practices. Thank you very much. Now it's time for questions, maybe.
Absolutely. No, thank you, Christophe. I think that's been super insightful and very interesting to hear about your journey here. We have a number of questions from the audience and from myself and the community. I'll jump straight into them. I feel like we should address the elephant in the room a little bit. I think we're all very much in favor of the model where everyone is a CSM, but how realistic is this? I mean, at the end of the day, a lot of those other functions were trained to perform behaviors that quite often opposite to what a customer success manager does. Like, where is the challenge there? How do we overcome that?
Yeah, that's a good question for sure. I can be very positive by telling you that everyone is able to be a CSM, but in fact that's very inspiring objective. But we all know that an account manager is mainly focusing on newbies, prospects, more than customer, more on renewal and so on. But at the end, for the moment, we have no choice because of the COVID-19. So the challenge is really to transform some hunters into farmers, which is really, really a challenge. The other challenge is obviously to be able to have with 10 CSM, to have the bandwidth to train and to support and to assist the other function. That's the main challenge. So it's why we have to put in place some internal webinar. We have to rely on Gainsight, on the tool in order to just not to rely just on a human being, but also on best practices and tools. So this is the main challenges I see on the short term.
Yeah. No, that's great insight. And do you see any kind of risks of maintaining that model longer term? Anything that you are prepared to deal with down the line?
Yeah. Of course, we will see what will be the economic situation at the end. So because we need to protect our renewal, but if we see that we are losing lot of renewal, which is not the case for the moment, by chance, also because I think we did a great job and we have a great solution. But even if we have a great solution, even if we do a great job, maybe the economic situation in the next 6-9 months will force some customer to make some decision and to cut their budget. And if we can be impacted at the end, as we are all impacted, so it will be a circle, a negative circle, and we have just it's mainly the main risk I see on the short term, but we cannot control that risk. For the risk we can control, I just need to be able to justify the value of Gainsight versus the cost. For the moment, we decided to move away and to concentrate Gainsight on the customer 360-degree view, which is a limited usage of Gainsight, very important one, but very limited. So at the end, if we consider that the cost of Gainsight doesn't compensate the value brought by having that positioning, probably we'll have to find another solution to cover that need with something else, with another solution. So that's the risk. And of course, the risk is to lose the best CSM we have currently. But the team is still very motivated. It's a great team. So I hope we will keep our existing team in each of the region in order to continue that job.
Yeah, that sounds great. A couple of other questions actually I'll ask from the audience. First one regards the goals of your customers together with your internal goals. Do you feel that this new alignment challenges the client goals in any way with your internal sales goals? Are you continuing to support client goals in a similar way, or has there been a challenge in doing that?
Yeah, that's a good question. But I think first, by having an organization where the CSM are part of the GO now, it was already the case physically, but they were reporting to me in Central, I think could help to have a more natural alignment.
Yeah.
And the fact that everyone, including sales reps, are paid and measured on net new, this is the same KPI, the same indicator. So once again, that's quite key to reinforce that alignment. I don't know if I answer completely the question. After that, I think we know that we have to protect the value provided by Nexthink to our customers. This is the most important objective in order to protect the renewal, to allow and facilitate upsell and cross-sell, and to get some additional logo by referencing, relying on references, active references. Yep. So I think I don't see many discrepancies between our internal objective and the main objective raised by our customers.
Mm-hmm. I do think this answered the question. If there's a follow-up, Matt, please do let us know.
Yeah.
I'd love to chat a little bit about the process of change. So firstly, with a question from the audience, besides the changes to organizational structure, such as CSMs reporting to local pre-sales now, were there any other practical examples of how you remove the silo mentality?
Not really. In fact, I think, it's very simple and very basic stuff in order to remove that perception, because it was really and mostly a perception. Mm-hmm. So by having the CSM reporting to someone in the GO, I think it changed a lot, but for me, it was already the case in the past. We just flip or change the dotted line and solid line. But my role in the past was already to make our best practices coherent from one region to another region. But on a day-to-day, I was not able to to define the priorities of a CSM. Is that customer more important than another one? I was not able to tell you that by having a global vision. So it was something to be decided locally. So I think this is mainly the main difference between the previous year. That's all. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that. How about how people reacted to that internally? So we're talking about serious restructuring, serious change in what people do and how they focus their time. Did people react to that change? How was it managed across the whole company?
As a normal change. So you have always some concern, of course, but I think it's the way you are communicating on those changes which make the difference. So you have to communicate clearly in a very transparent mode and positively. So as any change, you have some positive impact and maybe some negative impacts, and you have to be clear and transparent. For me, it was an opportunity for the CSM to do something different, or to do something similar in a different way, let's say. So they learned something new. They had a new manager. They have new challenges. They have different customers, because we had, as you can imagine, we had to review the list of customers in order to cover the customer by having half of the normal resources. So you can see that as an opportunity to do your job in a different way, or you can see that just as a negative change. But for me, I see change as an opportunity, as very positive, always, because it was also an opportunity to test something and to know if that change is positive, long-term, or negative. So typically, I'm not able to tell you that this approach and this change is positive. I think we have to wait for a couple of months. But I'm very interested in measuring the impact, and I can tell you in 12 months that I know the different situation, and I have tested that approach, and I know what are the results. So I think this is always positive to test and to learn something new.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, agreed. This is what we talk about in the Customer Success Network quite often, that change is good, specifically in the customer success profession. It's change is an absolute constant.
And honestly, this is for me an opportunity for the CSM to prove the value of the CSM. Because imagine if we see a negative impact of having less CSM, maybe it's very a concrete proof of the value of the CSM.
Mm-hmm. For sure. We're having a lot of questions coming in, so I'd like to chat a little bit about how you collaborate with sales and that movement from CSMs to more sales focus, and then secondarily to that with challenges around how you integrate it with data. But let's start with the sales perspective. Did you collaborate in any particular way with the sales leadership to get them on board with the business thinking about retention? Because I would imagine that this is where the sales teams get excited about that, is just from hearing from their leadership. How collaborative were they at that point?
I think it's a very pragmatic and day-to-day collaboration. For instance, we have a weekly forecast call in which we are reviewing the new logo opportunities and the renewal opportunities. And of course, being part of that call is a way to collaborate with sales and sales management. If you are out of that call, in fact, it's maybe more difficult to anticipate and to be aligned. So I would say that it's common sense. It's very pragmatic. You have to be identified and involved during the sales cycle or during the renewal cycle. Providing alerts, providing customer data, health score, and so on is a way to be very close to the salespeople. And in fact, during the last 4 or 5 weeks, we demonstrated Gainsight at least once a week. to the channel team, to some sales team, etc., etc. And it was not the case last year, but this year, everyone is interested in knowing what can we find in terms of customer data, what could be useful, how can I identify some customer at risk. So I think this is a concrete way of using the customer intelligence for a salesperson.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And how about the bandwidth of your CSMs now? You mentioned that you've had to go from 20 to 10 CSMs. Has that changed the number of clients that CSMs manage now? Has that had an impact of the time they can spend with each of their clients, and then any other impacts that you've noticed?
Yes, definitely. So we simplify the customer segmentation, and we reduce the number of customers covered by the CSM in global, in total. It means that each CSM is supposed to support the equivalent of customer compared to 2019. Maybe a little bit more, but you know, we cannot cover more than 20-25 customers by CSM. So if you do the math, in total, maybe we are covering 200 customers among the 1,000 we have for the CSM.
Okay. And on a similar topic, another question from the audience, again, related to moving CSMs to the sales organization. Have you seen an impact on their deliverables regarding customer experience since that changed?
Not really. I think, yeah, once again, the objective was to move a CSM, to force a CSM, let's say, maybe it's not the right word, but to have CSM more prescriptive. Initially, a CSM was asking questions about how do you use Nexthink, are you satisfied, what kind of value, and so on. But the next step was not only asking questions, but customers were expecting to have a CSM sharing best practices or giving ideas about how to better use Nexthink. So in that way, I think the integration with the sales team, especially with the pre-sales team, is a way to be much more technical and prescriptive regarding the way to use and the value to get by using our solution.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. And when you're talking about, you know, some CSMs are not covering less, some are covering more customers. A question from the audience again, does that mean that you choose particular categories or tiers of customers to cover? And if so, what was the rationale behind using them? So,
in fact, even in 2019, we realized that the segmentation is not the best approach for assigning CSM. So now we have CSM fully embedded into the local and regional sales team. In fact, they define their coverage in a very autonomous way. So the guideline is to have a CSM covering max 25, 30 customers. But after that, they took the list and they analyzed the list of customers. And you have many criteria to assign a CSM or not. For instance, I give you an example. We have some customer sold, signed, covered by a partner. And the partner is very capable, very skilled. They can be autonomous. They are very professional. So no need to have a CSM. We can rely on the partner because maybe the partner, they have also their own CSM. So that's an example. Even if the customer is important, okay, let's trust the partner and no need to have a CSM. So in fact, they define their coverage and their portfolio region by region and I was not involved except giving some guidelines, but for the rest, they were fully autonomous depending on the situation of each customer. For instance, if a customer was considered at risk, maybe it was good to have a CSM assigned, maybe not full time, but just for a temporary period of time, because the customer was maybe the product champion left recently. So it was important to have a CSM assigned for 6 months, for 3 months, just to be sure that the new product champion was really a champion for us.
I think that's really interesting. I might set up some time with you later just to dig a little deeper into that resourcing model, because I think there's just so much more that goes into it apart from segmentation, and your answer here has demonstrated, so thank you. Let's talk a little bit about data. Can you expand on the challenges, if you've experienced any, of integrating data from Salesforce, Zendesk, and all the rest into Gainsight?
Yeah, sorry, could you repeat the question?
Can you expand on any challenges with integrating data from Salesforce, Zendesk, and all the rest into Gainsight?
No, we don't have, except technical challenges, we don't have so many challenges. It was, the Salesforce integration is pretty obvious. It's pretty well integrated. For the rest, the challenge is mainly to pick up the right data, to have some relevant scorecards to share with the rest of the organization. So it's not only defining some data or some score which are useful according to us, but what are the scores useful for marketing, for support, for channel, for sales, etc., etc. So just to be sure that what we are integrating and what we are showing in terms of scorecard and dashboard are comprehensive and useful for the rest of the organization.
Yeah.
But technically speaking, we didn't face any main challenges. It's pretty simple. That's
good. And I do suppose if you're working with like a head of revenue ops or somebody who looks after those kind of systems, it becomes a little easier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You mentioned when you talked about Gainsight that you implemented calls to action and particular triggers. Can you talk a little bit more about what triggers you used from a data perspective in Gainsight?
What do you mean by trigger? For alerting? For what?
Yeah,
for
I would imagine it is regarding alerting. The person who asked that question can let us know if that answers it, but let's just take it from the alert perspective right now. What is it that would trigger an alert right now for the team through Gainsight?
Yeah. So we have listed approximately 20 reasons of alerting someone, and I think we have to focus on some very key reason to simplify the vision we are giving through the widget in Salesforce. So the main vision are the lack of value, the lack of adoption, maybe the fact that we have no activity or the customer has no activity with us for a period of time. So we have a long list, or a long list, 20 criteria, and we try to select only the criteria which could be automated, because once again, we want to be scalable. So we try to remove all the criteria which are based on a manual entry. So so that's mainly the answer I can give you at this stage. I don't want to dig into all the detail and the 20 criteria we have defined, but I think it's no surprise. It's mainly the activities in out. So if a customer, for instance, is not active on the community, on the academy, if they are not logging any tickets, etc., they are very passive. Another example of being passive is the version of the product you are using. if you are in a very old version, it means that maybe you are not active in upgrading your system, because for the moment we have still some customer on-prem. They are not all on cloud, etc., etc. So we define the list, and then we, based on that list, we decide if the criteria is a criteria for individual customer or if it's a criteria to use into a monthly report, for instance. Give me the list of all the customer using a very old version.
That's incredibly logical, I think, because if you're removing all the triggers that are based on manual entry, that it makes sense, because if somebody is manually entering something, they likely wouldn't need the trigger to tell them that this is going wrong. So that just shows how you've been able to optimize an organization so much.
Once again, the objective is to move. In fact, Gainsight was a system just the CSM were using in the past, and now we want to have Gainsight used by everyone to the company in order to have the customer view and the customer situation. To do that, we have to make it simple. If it's too technical, if we have some very complex rule, very smart, but very complex to understand and to implement and to maintain, it's not scalable and manageable for the long term.
Definitely. Okay. I can see that we're running out of time. We've had so many questions, which is so incredible. Thank you for everybody who has posted them. I would love to, and we're getting some great feedback that the session's been really informative. So thank you, Christophe, for joining us. Last question that I'd like to wrap up with. Let's talk about advice and recommendation. What advice would you give to other CSMs that are finding themselves in a similar position? Perhaps their company struggling, going through a restructure. What are the first steps that they should take to find the kind of opportunity that you have found, and give that situation a positive spin?
Yeah, so my advice to a CSM in such a situation is change and don't change. So at the same time. So change, why? Because use that opportunity to learn and to show that you are willing to learn and to test something new. So each time someone is asking for volunteers, raise your hand, be proactive and positive. So I think this is a change. And don't change is no reason to forget the best practices you have developed. Try to communicate on what is existing, what you are already doing. So usually what I saw, and this is one of the lessons learned in 2019, is we did great stuff, great job, but sometimes with a lack of communication and a lack of promotion. So my major advice is sell what you are doing, sell your success. So change, but at the same time, don't be proud of what you did and sell what you did in order to replicate your success in the future, in the near future.
What a great piece of advice. I think we're all guilty.
And the last advice is, if you change your manager, if the organization is changing, don't change your behavior with your former manager. I think it's quite important to be constant and to be coherent, even independently of who is managing you. Okay? Your value is not dependent on who is your manager, in which team are you working for. I think it's really important. You are an individual and your value comes from your skills or comes from what you are doing, not coming from in which team are you part.
So sure. Thank you so much for ending that in such a positive spirit. I think the lessons that you've given us can be used right now in the current situation, but also anytime that your people are going through change. Think that customer first, and then
definitely
be the positive change that you want to see out. Try not to use a cliche, but I think it's so appropriate here. Big thanks to everyone who joined us. Big thanks to Christophe. We're going to be having a June session, watch out on LinkedIn and in our workspace community to check to see what the topic is going to be. As usual, you can watch the recording on the workspace and soon on our YouTube channel. Have a fantastic afternoon. Thank you for joining us. Stay safe, everyone.
Okay, thanks a lot. Don't hesitate to contact me. Bye.